We will begin this week where we left off last week, differentiating archosaurs by key anatomical developments. At the primitive end of the Archosauria lie the Crurotarsi, including crocodilians. The technically definitive characteristic of Crurotarsans separating them from the rest of archosaurs can be found in their ankles. The crurotarsal ankle has both tarsals, also known as ankle bones, being roughly the same size. In the rest of archosaurs, the astragalus is much larger than the calcaneum. The joint at which the ankle hinges occurs differently in these two clades. Crurotarsans hinge their ankles between the two tarsals, while in dinosaurs and other ornithodyrans, the hinge lies on the distal end of both tarsals, as the tarsals are firmly articulated to the end of the tibia and fibula. Pterosaurs obviously have quite a few derived characteristics that come as a suite with their flight capabilities. As such, they look entirely unique compared to dinosaurs and other ornithodyrans. Around the time the first dinosaurs evolved, most ornithodyrans outside of pterosaurs were quite dinosaur-like in their appearance. This is why the group is called Dinosauromorpha, meaning dinosaur-shaped. Once, these dinosauromorphs that were not quite dinosaurs were called pseudosuchians, meaning pseudo-crocodilians. This name no longer makes sense, with crocodilians no longer quite as closely associated with dinosaurs anymore. Dinosauromorphs like Marsuchus and the Silosaurids were superficially indistinguishable from the earliest dinosaurs. At the time our textbook was published, the oldest known dinosaurs had been found in South America in late Triassic 229-million-year-old sediments. These were dinosaurs like Eoraptor, which represents the most primitive sauropodomorph we know, looking so little like sauropods that it was considered a theropod for a long time following its discovery. This is the case with most of the Saurischian dinosaurs in this fauna. They are so primitive it is difficult to tell which evolutionary trajectory their forms were moving toward, theropods or sauropods. Herrerasaurus may be the most primitive theropod dinosaur, as it has usually been considered to be for the past half-century or more. But it also appears in the fossil record at practically the same time as Eodromius and San Juansaurus. The most primitive ornithopod dinosaur, Paisanosaurus, also appears in this late Triassic South American fauna. This means both orders of dinosaurs, the Saurischian and Ornithischian dinosaurs, were already diversified enough at this stage in their evolution, suggesting that some dinosaurs had already existed and been diversifying for millions of years up to the point this 229-million-year-old fauna existed. These two orders of dinosaurs are defined by the shape of the pubes in their hips. Ornithischian pubes are boomerang-shaped, with one wing running parallel to the ischia and the other projecting forward. Saurischian pubes are simpler and only project one direction, downward to forward. One of the most visual similarities between all of these early dinosaurs and their dinosauromorph brethren is their long-legged, bipedal standing and walking posture. This posture is clearly the ancestral condition, and so was inherited by dinosaurs, making bipedality the primitive condition in dinosaurs. All quadrupedal dinosaurs secondarily evolved their posture. This probably does not seem like a shocking revelation, given that a good portion of the dinosaurs you are already familiar with are bipedal. Recent discoveries have revealed that there is another ancestral feature that all dinosaurs probably inherited from their dinosauromorph ancestors, and this one may shock you. This feature seems to be spread across the ornithodyra as well, not just in dinosaurs and dinosauromorphs. Monofilamentous, keratin-based integuments, most succinctly summed up as protofeathers, are now known to be preserved in fossils representing pterosaurs, Saurischian dinosaurs, and Ornithischian dinosaurs. If even as short-lived, fine, and sparse as the hairs of cetaceans like dolphins and whales, at some stage in their development all dinosaurs probably had at least some primitive feather-like structures. These fine, flexible, tubular structures that we are calling monofilamentous feathers were a far cry from the stiff, strong, and even water-resistant coatings of specialized feathers you may see on the birds in your backyard. As with the dinosaurs that bore them, feathers went through an evolution of their own. They did not start in any state to aid in flight or gliding. Only the tiniest creatures, probably too small to be vertebrates, might have used these structures to slow their aerial descent, similar to how baby spiders might parasail along on filaments of web. So flight seems not to be a purpose originally served by the most primitive dinosaur feathers. What else can feathers do then, besides form wings to make flight possible? We know that the coloration of feathers is something important to birds today, both for display and camouflage, so this might have been a benefit enjoyed by early dinosaurs. Feathers are also useful for insulation, as you have felt if you've ever worn a goose-down jacket or laid your head on a feather pillow. You have probably also experienced the hairs on your head and body detecting things in a tactile manner before your skin actually touches them, so this enhanced sense of touch would also probably have been enhanced for ornithopterans by feathers. These uses, and perhaps others, were in use for many millions of years before feathers were forming the first vertebrate wings which appear to have first appeared not just on the arms, but legs of theropod dinosaurs in the late Jurassic. Theropods were the first dinosaurs to be found with feathers preserved articulated to their fossil skeletons. Though their affinities with birds had been suspected for almost as long as biological evolution has been a documented theory, fossilized feather theropods were not known to science until the 1990s. Even before this, though, beginning with what some call the dinosaur renaissance of the 1970s, theropod dinosaurs in particular were being thought of as being more bird-like than other dinosaurs. Despite the name, theropod meaning beast-foot, the feet of theropod dinosaurs look more like the feet of birds than do any other animals. While most dinosaurs are digitigrade, like birds, meaning they walk on their toes, theropods in particular have the most bird-like feet. Our own feet would be categorized as plantigrade, since we walk on our heels and metatarsals, with our feet held essentially parallel to the ground. In addition to holding the arches of their feet erect, effectively giving them even longer legs for running faster, theropods were built for speed in other ways. Their skeletons were lightened by being filled with air pockets like birds. Theropods had a low center of mass placed below their hips and long tails to help with balance, ideal for increasing acceleration and agility at speed. Primitively, theropods were all carnivores, so their ability to both travel and change direction quickly had obvious benefits when it came to hunting. Theropods also started with teeth that were ideally adapted to hunting. Predatory theropod teeth possess a suite of characteristics that are together referred to as zyphodont dentition. Zyphodont teeth are conical to blade-like in shape, with a sharp tip and slicing edges, usually lined with serrations that help them rip through flesh like a saw. Steak knives are similarly designed to help them more efficiently cut meat, even though the teeth of tyrannosaurs are more banana-shaped than blade-shaped, an adaptation for puncturing and crushing bone. They still have cutting edges lined with serrations. The largest carnivorous theropods grew huge skulls, some more than 5 feet long. These monstrous 10-meter or more meat-eating dinosaurs usually had to make some physical sacrifices to maintain balance with such an enormous head on the end of their necks. Shortening the neck helped make the neck lighter and pull these huge heads closer to the center of mass. Shortening the arms also helped cut back on body mass in front of the hips. Since theropods are bipedal and effectively walking teeter-totters as far as gravity is concerned, failing to achieve balance would land a theropod flat on their faces, literally. Theropods did not just develop gigantic meat-eaters, though, throughout their 165 million years or more on this planet. Some of the smaller meat-eaters may have been the most advanced predators, capable of working together to tackle prey much larger than themselves, much like some of the more intelligent predatory mammals do today. Their agility would have been absolutely acrobatic compared to that of their larger theropod cousins. Using Deinonychosaurs as an example, their long arms would have sported stiff, long feathers similar to those used for flight in birds. Even though these feathered appendages were not useful for wings for flight, they would have been useful for swimming through and treading air, for maintaining balance while running up the near vertical and likely moving surfaces of larger prey dinosaurs' haunches. Deinonychosaurs also have the stiffest of all theropod tails, with zygapophyses interlocking and overlapping as many as 10 caudal vertebrae. Only the base of their tails had any flexibility, and the rest was a rigid, feathered rudder. These feathers on the arms, tail, and probably much of the rest of the body would have provided ultra-lightweight, self-repairing armor that was probably also a means of blending in with their environment. Color patterns have been preserved on the fossil feathers of Deinonychosaurs and other dinosaurs in the form of the proteins that produce color on skin, scales, hair, and feathers, called melanosomes. Melanosomes have even been preserved so finely that they can be identified and matched with modern proteins that are either identical or homologous, so we can tell what color these feathers would have been even if they no longer appear as that color in fossil form. The brains of Deinonychosaurs were also the largest among dinosaurs relative to their body mass, with troodontids in particular being the champions of dinosaur encephalization. We call this ratio of brain mass to body mass the encephalization quotient, and 66 million years ago, troodontids were some of the smartest animals around, being at least comparable to the intelligence of modern marsupials. As voracious as predatory theropods got, though, these were advances in the ancestral condition. They had been evolving to be the top terrestrial predators for more than 165 million years, so they had ample time to hone their craft through natural selection. The derived or advanced condition for theropods is herbivory, or plant eating. We start to see a great diversity of herbivorous theropods appear in the early Cretaceous, perhaps linked with the evolution of angiosperms, or flowering plants. Zyphodont teeth are hardly useful for eating plants. Plant tissues tend to be fibrous and difficult to digest. It tends to take some effort to break down, either mechanical effort or chemical effort applied over time. When a dinosaur does not have teeth that are well adapted to chewing their food, digesting plants calls for more creative measures. Some herbivorous theropods developed muscular foreguts, or pre-stomachs called crops or gizzards. They stocked these gizzards with stones called gastroliths, or stomach stones, selected for their size and hardness by swallowing these rocks. When the dinosaur swallowed a bite of plant material, it passed through this stone-filled gizzard where it was mashed mechanically through the muscular action of the gizzard, agitating the stones. This allowed these herbivorous dinosaurs to chew their food in a way, after swallowing it. Some behaviors, like eating plants, are discernible from fossil evidence. The shape of a dinosaur's teeth may be flat, suggesting it chewed gritty food, which would be plant material. A dinosaur might be found with gastroliths articulated inside it, showing that the dinosaur had a gastric mill for grinding up resistant plant tissue. We might even find stomach contents preserved in place with identifiable scraps of plant tissue, pollen, or spores. Not all behaviors or capabilities are so obviously correlated with physical evidence. So how do we ascertain less tangible behaviors that might not be preserved in the fossil record? For this, we need to look into the minds of dinosaurs, or at least their brain cases, to see how their brains were sized and shaped. Depending on the senses a dinosaur may have relied on most heavily, its brain will often show this aptitude, with the regions of the brain involved in this sense being relatively enlarged. For example, the sense of smell in vertebrate brains is processed in the olfactory lobe of the brain. An animal that relied heavily on this sense of smell will likely have enlarged olfactory lobes, which we can see by looking at endocasts, or stone formed of sediments that filled the brain cavity. We can also use CT scans to see the insides of brain cases, rather than relying on the rare instances where a skull has weathered away, exposing its endocast. In addition to looking at the shapes of dinosaur brains, we can study the other sinuses and canals of their skulls to see things like how sight and sound may have been sensed. Their large eyes with overlapping fields of vision show that predatory theropods had stereoscopic vision, meaning regions of the field of vision of each eye overlapped, granting exceptional depth perception at close range. As you might imagine, this would be a very useful feature for tracking and capturing prey, or perhaps for gliding from branch to branch.